Alright guys, welcome to my perfect start series. This is part 1 of 2, and today we're going to learn how to build the A-Team.
1, 2, here comes the 5, 6. This I spit flow like the Dwarf Fortress. Come through, take down flat sticks. This that's the glow like a
So, to build the A-Team, pretty simple. First we need to go into an active world. Let's just start a new world. Create a new world. Okay, small mods. Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Create world. And it doesn't matter if you've already got a world existing, you can start a game in a existing world, but what we want to do is get to the embark screen so we can prepare for a journey carefully, because we're going to save a template that will save across all of our games for the future. And that'll just help you whenever you're making a new game. You'll just click on the button and your perfect team setup will be there. So I'll go to Fortress, skip tutorial, okay, zoom in here, embark. So this perfect start, I'm just going anywhere so I can set up the team. So don't worry about what it looks like, because we want to do one of these two here. So usually go play now, prepare for the journey carefully. Alright, so here we are. We're going to make the A-Team. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of this screen. So you've got the Dwarves tab here in the top left. Then you've got items. What are all the things that you're bringing in your caravan? Or your wagon, I should say. And then the animals. What animals are you going to bring? So if we look over to the left here, with the dwarves, you've got skills, which is where we allocate the skills. And since I've got this highlighted for Udil Nokimerez, pretty good pronunciation there, not. He's got 4 tabs. You've got the crucial, labour, combat, and other. And each one has a whole heap of skills. And this can be quite daunting, because there's so much in there. But that's why you're watching this video, to pick the good skills for a starting team. And then you can click on view for each dwarf and it'll tell you, give you an overview of everything. But the most important thing here is overview. And this little box here, disdains fairness, values cunning, resists sickness. Each embark that you start, your 7 dwarves, everything is randomly generated for them. But this is a good way, in this little section here of each dwarf, to find which dwarf might be better for certain things. So for people for the dwarf that you're going to use for trading with the traders, you don't want someone who doesn't like, or is antisocial. Or if you want your carpenter to get to legendary skill, you probably don't want him to disdain craftsmanship, because they're not going to enjoy their job. So this is worth scrutinizing for each dwarf before you start allocating skills for the rest of this video. Okay, and the last thing that I want to talk about as an overview is these bottom tabs here, Fortress name. So when you actually embark, again, we don't care for this one because we're just making we're going to save this as a perfect start team for when we want to embark properly. And you can just random the names. Nation Guild, great. Stone Furnace, Carry Worked, Tool Crafts. Or you can go over here and get a little bit more detailed and pick the perfect name. Group name, that's the name of the 7 dwarves on their way. The Grooved Vessel, the Scarlet Mechanism, the Descent Palisade, great. Group symbol, now the group symbol, the symbol of the Oil of Vines, is actually tied to the Dwarven Empire that you embarked from. So that's outside the scope of this video. But you can choose which Dwarven Empire of the 7 or so that were created in the history, and whatever that host civilization that your group is left from, the symbol will be related to that parent, to the parent civilization's symbol. Problems, that's for when you actually use a prefab that we're going to build here, and if there's any issues when you embark, like there's not the type of wood bucket, so you've picked older wood buckets and older wood splints and older wood crutches, and you've created a new world, and you're going to use this again, and older wood is not available in your area, it'll let you know, and you'll be brought back to the screen, and you can click on problems and figure out what you need to do. And it's usually something to do with wood or a specific type of food. Hopefully we'll be able to sort most of those problems out with what we're going to actually put into our items, but that's where you go to look for it. And then the save profile. Once we finish here, that's the button that we're going to go to save this for future use on all our fortresses, if you so wish. Alright, so let's get into it. Who's team member number 1 for the A team? It's the Clark. Alright, so the Clark is the most important because he's going to do a lot of your noble stuff early on. He's going to be expedition leader, he's going to be trading with the traders, he's going to be doing all the work orders, and he is going to be keeping a stock of all your, doing the bookkeeping for all your stocks. So what kind of dwarf do we need for this? So we want someone who actually enjoys talking to other people. So let's values eloquence. There you go. So already the first dwarf here, Oodle, is probably a good choice. Developed empathy. Good intuition. Dwarf number 2, Zon. What a coincidence. Zon. How perfect. Poor empathy, disdains romance, humorless, overbearing. Yeah, probably don't want him to be our representative for our fortress. Disdains craftwork. Oh, here we go. This guy we do not want to be any of our craft dwarves, which we'll talk about later on. So that's good to know. Tradition, harmony. All right, let's go to the first one. We'll make him our Clark. So what do we need to do? How do we make him a Clark? Skills. First things first, we want to go to Other, the Other tab here in the top right. We want to scroll down a little bit, and we want to go to Organizer. Organizing skill is all about how quickly the work orders go out from his office. So once we've allocated him to be the manager, he will use the organizing skill, once you've given him an office, to do all your work orders. So that's an important skill, but we only want to put 2 in there. Record keeper is probably the most important one for me anyway, because the higher the skill is for record keeping, the more accurate your records will be. Then we need to deal with the skills for trading. And we've only got 5 more points to put here. And we want to go 1 into persuasion, novice persuader. So this is his ability to get a better price and persuade others to do what he's saying or do what he wants. But we need negotiating to have 2. So he's an adequate negotiator, which goes kind of hand in hand with persuader. And the last one is appraiser, and we want 2 in that. So he's an adequate appraiser. An appraiser is the dwarf's ability to assess the relevant price for an item. The better that skill is, the better he is at that. So that is now the Clark done. And when we go on part 2 of this series of the Perfect Start, I'll show you how to allocate him to his noble roles and his office and how to set that up. The last thing I want to talk about the Clark is when you embark, you'll have the 1 miner, which will be one of our dwarves later on. But your second miner will be your Clark. You won't have any skill in mining, but he's essentially your admin dwarf, and he's not going to be doing any admin apart from moving things around whilst you set up your starter fort. So he is a good one, a good option to get mining. He'll build his skill up until you get your first immigration wave. So your Clark is also your secondary miner. All right. So who is the next team in our in the A team? It's the Doctor.
No man, diamonds in my teeth, I got a lot of shine. Running up the number.
Okay, the doctor. What kind of skills do we need for the doctor? I always embark with the doctor because the specific skills you need for a medical dwarf in a hospital can't always be relied on for immigration. And they're important after you start your starter fort and you start getting injured dwarves through mining accidents, chopping down trees and landing on heads, or combat. You need a dwarf with all the relevant skills, and then if you get lucky, you'll get some, hopefully, a legendary medical dwarf come through. But that's not always the case. So I always like to dedicate a dwarf to this, so I know sometimes I've had 5 migrations and I've had no one with any medical skills, and it's a pain in the ass. So that's why I always start with the doctor. So what skills do we need? So we need to stay in the other tab here, and the most important one for a doctor is diagnostician. Diagnostician. And why is that? We want 3 in there. 1, 2, 3. We want to get them to competent, because no medical treatment or triage can happen on a dwarf until their injuries have been diagnosed. And the speed and the accuracy at which that diagnosis happened is directly through the skill. So being competent in that will mean that the dwarves who get injured will get the relevant treatment and they'll be able to get it quicker. So 3 into to this skill here. And then we want to go wound dresser. We want to put 2 in that, because your basic wounds early on will be treating wounds. So we'll just go 2 in there. Then we want a suturer. We want to go 2 in there for stitching up wounds, open wounds. We want surgeon. We want 2 in there in case we have to get a dwarf onto a table and start doing surgery. And then we only got 1 point left, and I'll put that into bone doctor. I always go bone doctor lowest, because it's, whilst you can treat bones, they're less likely to be your early injuries, and setting a bone is less likely to kill a dwarf rather than an infected open wound. So that's just how I look at it. If you had a few fortresses where broken bones are causing you more issues, you can add another skill here, but you have to take it away from somewhere. And I just believe, for me, suturing, wound dressing, and surgery is more important. So anyway, that's your doctor done. And we'll move on to the 3rd member of our A team, the carpenter. Okay, so what do we want for a carpenter? First of all, let's view. We don't want that dwarf who is here with disdains craft work. Do we have any others? No, it's just him. Okay, so Fath, we'll make him our craft dwarf. If you've got some good skills in the 7 dwarves that you start that look like they relate to crafting or values craft work or is a hard worker, your carpenter works his butt off. He really does. All the barrels, all the beds, all the chests, all the doors, anything that involves wood, this guy's going to be, or this girl is going to be working on. The other side of the house is, whilst he is not going to be the busiest dwarf, he's up there. In the spare time that he has in between building you beds and barrels, he's going to be doing your gemstones. So he's a double craft dwarf, so having good craft skill with him is important because he's going to be doing a lot of crafting. So let's look at the skills. First of all, woodcutter. It's in crucial. 2, make him adequate. Then underneath carpenter, 4, get him to skilled. Then we go over to labour. Nope, no we don't. We stay in crucial. We go to gem cutter. Not gem setter, gem cutter. Get it to skilled. So you make your barrels, you make your beds, you're cutting your gems. This dwarf will be able to do all of that, and it's a full-time role. So the other reason why I have gem cutting at skilled is because that's your early income, and getting out some good quality gemstones is the difference between a 200 gemstone and a $1,000 gemstone, or gold, sorry, copper, whatever the, you know what I mean, whatever the base currency is. So a skilled gem cutter will more regularly pump out better gems for that first trade come the first winter. Okay, so carpenter's done. Who's the next member of the A team? It's the mason. Okay, so the mason is probably the busiest. He's just building everything. And the amount of cabinets, thrones, tables, doors, pots, he's doing a lot of stuff. So for the mason, obviously the first skill is masonry, or mason. We want to get him skilled. So there's 4 to go into there. The other thing that he's doing is he's your mechanic, building mechanisms for your traction benches, for your traps, for your drawbridges, for your levers, all of those things that need mechanisms. So we want to get him skilled in that as well. And because you're not going to be doing too much of that early on, you're going to be doing a bit of digging, he's going to be your miner. Adequate miner. Now, he won't be your miner after your first immigration wave comes in, because he's going to be busy doing everything else. But because it takes a while to get down, and you're going to be building things like your kitchen and your still and all that before you're building a masonry and a mason and a mechanic, I make him my miner. So he's my main miner, and then my clerk in the beginning is my secondary miner. And then once I get my first immigration wave, I change it up a bit. So that's what we do with him. And the reason why I didn't make it this dwarf here is because this dwarf disdains craft work, so we keep away from that. Okay, so now that the mason is done, we're halfway there. We're over halfway. Let's talk about team member 5. It's our cook.
Tell me I'm awesome, yeah. Hot like fire on a pan. If you want to touch me, please use caution. OMW, on my way to you. Good at what I do.
Okay, so team member 5, let's have a look here. Disdains harmony and patient. Oh, well, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes you just get a poor bunch, sometimes you get an excellent bunch. Generally, it's in the middle. Okay, so Logum here is going to be our cook. What do we need? Well, cook to begin with. So if we go to labour, down the middle here, cook, 4 into cook. We want him to be skilled. Then we want him to be, we need to go to planter, go back to crucial. We want to put 2 in planter. So this dwarf is going to be your secondary farmer dwarf, planting the crops that he's going to be cooking and helping your main dwarf, your main farmer dwarf, which we'll talk about later, in the farms. And then we want to add 2 into butchery, adequate butcher, and then we want to go back to labour, and we want to scroll down a bit to animal dissector, 2 into there. So the cook is going to be making your food, is going to be butchering any animals that you've requested to be butchered, and has got a bunch of skills that help with that, and obviously farming. So that's your cook done. Next one, hand in hand with the cook, team member number 6 is the brewer. Okay, so our brewer. What skills do we need for a brewer? Arguably one of the most important dwarves in the fortress, because he's making all the alcohol, and that's really important. So, because our dwarves need to be inebriated, and we need to keep pumping out that alcohol. So we're going to go straight to proficient, put as many as we can from an embark, 5 into brewing. And he's also going to be our main farmer. And we're going to put 5 into farming, so he can farm quicker. And that's pretty much going to be his jobs. He's going to be brewing the alcohol and planting the plump helmets so we can brew some more alcohol. Alright, great. Pretty easy there. Now last one, team member number 7, the Fisherman and everything else dwarf.
All I know is this, a crew gon' step. All I know is this, my boys gon' rap.
Okay, so our Fisher Dwarf, not Fisherman, Fisher Dwarf, he's the last member of the team, and he's the one that disdains craft work, the antisocial, doesn't like anything, or the useless dwarf, because it's probably the most... It's the dwarf that you don't have to depend on the most. So if he doesn't catch as many fish, or is he doesn't need to use craft dwarfship to do that. So he's your most useless dwarf, unfortunately. So your Fisher Dwarf, what does he need? Fisher Dwarf, 4 into that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we make him skilled in catching the fish. Then we need to go to labour. Once you catch the fish in the fishery, we need to clean the fish. So we give him 2 in fish cleaning. And dissect the fish. We go 2 and 2 fish dissection. And then we've got 2 more points left. And this is the random kind of jobs that we can't add anywhere else for a starting kind of embark. And we go back to crucial. And then we go to wood burner. Just going to burn our wood so we can get some coke for our first furnaces if we haven't got anyone that's better with our first immigration. And we want furnace operator 1. So we've got a novice wood burner and novice furnace operator. So that is our 7 members of the A team. But we haven't finished here. We now need to talk about animals and items. Okay, we're going to start with animals. What animals do we want to bring for our perfect start? We want some early defense, and this will go around the entrance to our fortress, and that's going to be in the way of war dogs. I would like to note that behind all the animals you have the male and female symbol. So war dogs, we want 2 male and 2 female. And usually by the first winter they've had a litter of puppies, and they'll just be normal dogs. You have to train them, but you'll have more dogs. So 2 war dogs, male and female. So you'll have 4 here. Next thing we need is cats. Now to avoid cat explosions, we either want 2 males or 2 female cats. We don't want a male and a female because they'll just breed like crazy, and then before you know it you've got a million, and you'll experience FPS death, and you'll be playing the game at 2 frames per second because the computer can't handle tracking a million cats at once, and all of the things that they kill. So just 2 cats, male or female. And if you get any new cats in the embark, even if you're a cat lover, I'm sorry, butcher them before they become a pet. Unless they're another male or another female, whatever sex that you went with, then you can keep them, as long as they're not breeding. That's my recommendation, hot tip for new players. Kill all the other sex cats. What else do we need? All we really need is a basic animal, be it a sheep or a pig. About 51, well, one that is costs 51 points. We want a male and a female. I'll just go a ram and a ewe. And you can go pigs, whatever floats your boat, really. And then the last thing, probably the most crucial, this is how we're going to deconflict cooking our plump helmets, cooking our plump helmets from brewing them. And that's through the power of chickens. Chickens. Hens, we want 5 of them, and we want 1 rooster. I will explain in detail in part 2 what we do with that, but essentially you put your chickens in a pen, and you craft some nest boxes through the Craft Dwarf workshop, be the wood or rock nest boxes, and you put them into their enclosure or their pen, and they'll lay eggs. and your doors will go get the eggs, and then you go turn them into essentially egg omelets through the kitchen. And this will be a reliable source of food for your fort for a long time. Especially helpful in the early stages of your fortress. So 5 hens and 1 rooster, and that's you done for animals. What's next? Items. We've got 260 points left. Let's go spend it in our items. Okay. You've got a generic here on the left. So on the left is what you're taking, and on the right is what you can take. And there's a lot here. And I'm just going to get straight to the point. Copper picks, get rid of them. Go over here to the right, type in pick, and get 2 bronze picks. So we come over here, we've got 2 bronze picks. Then we want to kit out our hospital. And so we want gypsum plaster. So you type in gypsum, go to powders on the left, gypsum plaster. Go 5 of those. Do I have 5? Where to go? 4. We got 1 more. Backspace that. We want a little bit more thread for our first hospital. You can get pigtail, but I go cave spider silk thread because it's a bit cheaper. And go 5 of them. Okay. So we've got 155 left. So we're going to get rid of our buckets, our splints, our crutches, our wheelbarrow, and our stepladder. And we're going to go back into the splints, and we're going to look for tower cap splints. 3. Tower cap, you should be able to find in most starting biomes, instead of like acacia or willow or papaya. Sometimes they don't exist in that region where you're trying to embark, and then it'll come down here in the problem. So if you go tower cap for everything, you should be able to avoid that. Not always, but most times. So crutches, tower cap crutches times 3. And we want to go buckets, tower cap buckets times 3. And we want wheelbarrow. Just type in wheelbarrow. Go down to tower cap. We can just type in tower cap wheelbarrows. And we want to go step ladder, tower cap. Step ladder, where is it? Tower cap. Here. Alright, great. So now we've replaced what we just removed. What else do we need? Okay, so in our fish, we want to get something that can give us shells early on. Why do we want that? Because if you have a possessed dwarf early on and they want shells, and you don't have any, they're just going to hold that workshop until you build another one. And you might even run out of time and they become depressed and they go punch someone in the face, they go kill another dwarf, or they just become a recluse and do nothing, and essentially you lose a dwarf. So, and shells and bones as well, but shells mainly are one of the things that you're going to need early on. It's just good to have them. So we can do that here in our setup. So we got fish, cave lobsters, male or female, doesn't matter. Just get 15 cave lobsters. So when you go start making basic meals, they'll start using your lungfish or whatever. Once they start converting those lobsters, the shells will go into your stockpile. Whenever you get a possessed dwarf who becomes inspired to craft some legendary shell trinket, your shells will be there. Okay. What else do we need? We need to scroll up here into the seeds, and we want to start beefing up our starting seeds. Plump helmets, go to 30. Plump helmet spawn. Pigtails, go to 10. Cave wheat, go to 15. Sweet pods, go to 15. Rock nuts, go to 10. Dimple cup, go to 15. And we want to go down here to our plump helmets. We go to 30. And we're done. So what do we do from here? Now that we've sorted out our dwarves, we've given the skills, we've set up our beginning items, we've offset some of those initial issues that you might face by getting better bronze picks so you dig faster, getting more seeds so you don't run out in your farms. We've got some gypsum plaster for our first hospital, as well as some thread. We've replaced a lot of the wood things with something that's a little bit more ubiquitous across the world, so we can avoid those issues for embarking in random places. Once you've done the fortress name and your group name and your group symbol, you can pretty much, to be honest, ignore all of this, because you're probably going to start a new world or in a new location. We want to save the profile. And down here, once you click on save, you can change the name, and I'll just go perfect. Oh, I name it perfect start. And I think vanilla is important, because this is a perfect start for normal biomes. You wouldn't be taking this into a haunted biome. You wouldn't be taking this into a frozen biome. This is for just generic starting biome locations, because if you were going to start in those harder biomes, or if you're going to start in the desert or a badlands, you will be bringing more wood to begin with, because there won't be any wood in your map, etc., etc. If you're going into a haunted biome, you're not going to be taking many craft dwarves. You're going to be taking, your wrestlers and your axe dwarves and your spear dwarves to be able to defend your initial holdings, and because everything's going to be trying to kill you straight away. So this is just a vanilla perfect start. And then you can click save and go embark. Okay, and here we are in the new world. So you can quit here. We've just set up our template, our prefab for a perfect start team, the A team as I like to call it. And this is what I do pretty much for every vanilla game that I play. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you've got any questions, please leave it in the comment section. And stay tuned for part 2, which I'll be releasing in the next few days. And we'll discuss what are the advanced options for world generation to generate a perfect world for, or try to generate a perfect world for our perfect start team, and what are the kind of considerations for, or more advanced considerations as I would consider them, for an embark location to hopefully get a site that we can build a fortress that'll last until we dig through all the caverns and get ourselves into hell and fight all the demons. Why not? So yeah, again, hope you enjoyed it. It's almost Christmas time. Merry Christmas. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you in part 2. See you later.